Finally, AGATHA all along, episode 6
You
breakdown.
must be Bonerific 69.
Quicksilver.
Welcome back, everyone.
That shit
It's
was
Charlie.
nice. That shit
was
was
the
cool
most
as hell.
bonerific episode of AGATHA all along. This time we should be saying it was Billy all along. It was Wiccan
It was
all along. There are a whole bunch of
Billy
Easter eggs and
all
references.
along.
The episode was pretty much a Billy backstory explainer episode to explain how he did come back after Wandavision. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes.
That was a good
we'll just start at the
backstory.
beginning and work our way through shot by shot, talk about Easter eggs,
How
WTF
they
moments,
did it.
and all the foreshadowing, because there is a lot of stuff that they use during the episode to set up future
Vision.
movies and spin-offs.
Wanda's dead. Word on the street is Sword used Vision for parts. And the twins.
Cannot believe they
Yes,
got
Cap.
Evan Peters to come back as his Ralph Boner character,
Yeah, I
now
didn't
known
expect
as
that.
Bonerific, doing one-man shows in Paramus, New Jersey. Love the fact that he was willing to give them the information in exchange for their attendance at his show, just because it was doing so poorly. Like, please, I need to get some bodies and some seats. I know there are a lot of questions
He is
about what happened to
desperate.
him after the events of WandaVision 2. He kind of alludes to it during here, but there are a lot of deleted scenes from WandaVision that they released in the last year or so, so I'll talk about that when we get to that part of the video. There are a couple funny jokes about
My
him still having
Quicksilver.
abilities
Yeah.
after the events of the Hex. But the actual episode title was Familiar by Thy Side, which is a reference to like the next line in the Ballad of the Witch's Road. That's the whole trope
I
that they're
didn't
doing
expect
episode to
that.
episode. Each of the titles have been lines from the Ballad of the Witch's Road. But that's also what they called Billy before this too, as in a witch's familiar. Like I said, it's mostly meant to be Billy's backstory explaining what happened to him after WandaVision, how he came back inside Teen's body, aka Billy Kaplan, now
He
confirmed
stole
to be
the
Billy
soul.
Kaplan, which is a little more comic book accurate, but as they tend to do in the MCU movies, the TV shows, they change some aspects of his comic book story. But the actual opening scene, we see Billy Kaplan, aka the original version of Teen before young Billy Maximoff's soul inhabited his body, preparing for his bar mitzvah, which happens at age 13, just giving you an idea for when this took place. Basically coinciding with the WandaVision finale.
That's when
This
he
tree
took
from
over.
his ceremony inside the Jewish faith is meant to represent the tree of life, but because we're in the Marvel Universe, you could also look at this as a wink at Loki's multiverse tree, aka the world tree Yggdrasil. They performed the actual ceremony, and you notice on the cards here it reads the magic mitzvah, confirming that his name was Billy Kaplan, but also the magic term too. Like they said that Billy Kaplan, before Billy Maximoff came along, was obsessed with magic. Also notice the way they spell magic with a K. They also subtitle that in episodes. So if you watch the episodes with subtitles, anytime someone like Rio or Agatha talks about magic itself,
That's what
they
I was
use it with a
wondering.
K. These are meant to be Billy
Where
Kaplan's
is
mother
Rio?
and father. He's wearing blue, which also happens to be the color of Billy Maximoff's magic when it manifests in the blue light at his party afterwards. So lots of blue coloration here. And there's also a lot of Easter eggs inside Billy Kaplan's life, foreshadowing things that happen on the road. Mostly because the road is this magical alternate dimension that conforms itself to each specific witch. So if Scarlet
the
Witch
hell?
went and walked the road on her own,
That
it
gotta
would
be
look
a
different
meme.
for her. They use this early party scene just to show you that he had a good relationship with his parents, his friends, his school. Generally, his life was meant to be very pleasant. He goes to a palm reading, and you find out that his
The
parents
witch.
hired Lilia for the party, setting up a bunch of future stuff. The reason why she doesn't recognize him later during the events of episode 1 when Agatha
put the
came
sigil
to find
on
her
her.
is because of the way the sigil works, confirming that she's
Yeah,
the person
bruh.
that put the sigil
We
on
I thought
Billy.
it was
The
Wanda.
minute she put it on him, she forgot everything about him or ever meeting him.
Clear that a long journey lies ahead of you. This journey will be one of great transformation and
When she talks about the long journey, the great transformation she sees, it's foreshadowing for his eventual death, Billy Maximoff yoinking his body, transforming into Billy, basically. Also, when the lights flicker, that's her powers actually working, like magic is being channeled here. She's not just pretending like she was initially
going
when Agatha
crazy.
showed up.
She
The
saw
lifeline being
Wanda.
broken in two is literally a reference to his actual death. When she tries to play it off like it's no big deal, saying that he's changing, becoming a new you, he literally becomes Billy Maximoff. When she says the tower reversed, that's her seeing the future of her trial in what will probably be the events of episode 7.
Tower
I think it's a
reverse.
reference to gravity reversing here in the trailers with everyone flying through the air.
Uh.
Within the world of tarot, the tower is widely associated with danger, crisis, sudden change, destruction, higher learning, liberation,
lost
which
when
is
she
basically
said
all
that.
the things that are happening to Billy in the last couple of episodes. When he mentions the early Argento vibes, that's the horror filmmaker Dario Argento. One of his most notable works is the Three Mothers film trilogy, a triumvirate of ancient witches who are determined to rule the world, foreshadowing him eventually joining the coven to walk the road. We find out that she's the person that actually drew the sigil. My early theory was that it was actually Billy that tried to do it himself, so this is actually a bit of a surprise.
Yeah,
But the
nobody
reason why she
expected
calls
that.
it out later, saying that it's kind of sloppy work, Agatha also clowns on it too. So technically Agatha was clowning on Lilia because Lilia is the person that made it. The idea is that she
But why
forgot
did it
after making it just
have
because that's
Wanda's
the way that
initials,
sigils
though?
work. Like the witch who cast it would not remember that she cast it. Which is why
That
right after
was
this, when
kind of
she
crazy.
sticks it in his jacket pocket, she doesn't remember that it needs to go to Billy Kaplan. She just says, this needs to go to somebody, I don't remember who, because she literally does not remember who. They
Mm.
mentioned something's happening with the anomaly in Westview. That's what
They
regular
had to go
people
home.
outside the Hex called it inside the MCU. It's the same thing with the blip in the snap. Like Thanos' snap was called the blip by normal people in the MCU because they didn't see that he was snapping his fingers. They just heard that a purple space alien killed half of all life in the universe. This is also to remind you that Billy said he was from Eastview, which is where this is taking place, why Billy Kaplan here was outside of the Hex when this is all going
Barely
down. He
outside
notices
of the
the sigil,
Hex.
the Hex coming down. This is the finale of Wandavision, like I said. Like this is all going down the last couple moments of the episode. His mother is distracted by the Hex, crashes, and it
Shake
kills
my
Billy.
head.
R.I.P. to Billy Kaplan.
It was a
A lot of
hard
people
ass
ask me, if he
crash.
had the sigil, why didn't the sigil save Billy Kaplan from dying? My assumption, just based on the way that Rio talked about magic being kind of ambiguous in that way, is that the protection sigil wasn't meant to protect him in that particular way. We hear his heart stop slowly,
Mm.
and all of a sudden, young Billy and Tommy's voices saying
He
goodnight to
took
each other as
over.
the Hex is coming down. Like the last couple seconds as the Hex is coming down, their bodies are destroyed. In the way they play this, young Billy's soul immediately jumps into Billy Kaplan's body, like no time goes by. As he comes to, he immediately screams Tommy because like he just remembers seeing Tommy across from him in his bed.
I
And the
wonder where
reason why he jumped
Tommy's
into
at.
this particular body of Billy
That's what he's
Kaplan is
looking
because
for,
it
though.
was just like the nearest dead body available. It's meant to be a callback to Rio's other comment about the way magic works with the summoning spell, being ambiguous about summoning her because she just happened to be the most powerful witch closest by. The other side of this, too, is the sigil doing its work so Billy Maximoff doesn't remember everything about the Hex. He just
Mm.
knows that he is not this Billy Kaplan person, but he doesn't fully have all of his old other memories, too, as Billy Maximoff. So he basically spends the next 3 years trying to figure everything out. You notice that Alice is one of the firefighters on the scene. He actually sees the other witches from the Coven in various places
Yeah,
across
all the
these 3
witches.
years, all because they're within a
All
3-mile
of them.
radius. That was the whole deal in episode 1. Agatha said
And
that
they
one
all
of the
came
rules
together.
of being a witch is that you can basically find enough within a small radius to form a coven. Maybe there's also some aspect here where because of his power, he's drawn to other witches or other witches are also drawn to him. And he basically has to play this off as if it's amnesia with him trying to figure out where he is, who these
He was
people
going
are,
crazy.
what's going on just in
He could
general.
read their
Basically
mind.
start his performance pretending to be Billy Kaplan because that's who everybody thinks that he is. We also find out that he has telepathy. They weren't super clear about this during WandaVision, but Ralph Boner later clarifies that young Billy was telepathic, so you do kind of hear a little bit of that going on during WandaVision if you go back
And
and
he
watch
didn't
those
even know it
episodes.
was Billy.
But it's not a result of the crash or anything like that. He was always meant to be telepathic, one of his many abilities. Most of his powers inside the MCU are the same as Scarlet Witch's powers. Like he has reality warping, he has the same access to magic that she does, but it's not chaos magic. The way that Agatha talks about it later, she
I
says
wonder
that
if
he
he's
has
gonna be good or
big
bad,
magic,
though.
as in crazy powerful magic on
Chaos
par with
magic.
Scarlet Witch. Maybe not quite as powerful, but eventually someday he might become as powerful. Notice when they go back, as they're trying to figure everything out, the dog immediately knows that it's not really Billy Kaplan, some sort of a sixth sense that animals have, I suppose. Inside Billy's room, you notice that Billy Kaplan, like I said, was obsessed with magic and a lot of fantasy-based tropes here all over the
Oh
room. A lot
shit.
of this looks
He
familiar
became
too,
a
because they're tropes that we see,
someone
things that we
with
see
magic.
inside the Witch's Road. Like he's got the Houdini posters. Maybe he was a real magician inside the MCU too. Like Houdini did actually have magic inside the Marvel Universe. The Mystic Rock poster is a reference to the story that he told Alice about his mother going to see Alice's mother perform the music. This poster in the middle also feels like a reference to the events of the Witch's Road and the things that are happening there. There's a Goofballs poster which feels like a Goonies parody. I don't know why they had to call it Goofballs instead of just calling it straight up Goonies. That's probably meant to be a reference to the Coven itself on their adventure through the road, like the Coven itself is kind of like the Goonies. This picture on the doorway of the woods seems like a depiction of the actual Witch's Road. The castle that he has sitting here nearby, probably a reference to
It
the
was
castle during
foreshadowing.
Lilia's trial that they see. Then he starts practicing his disguise, playing it as if he is Billy Kaplan. We get the next time jump to 3 years later. He's got that boyfriend that texted him earlier. He shows him the sigil without really knowing what it is. They sort of set up the idea that he's trying to be honest with the people close to him about what's really going on and what he's trying to find out. And even though Agatha literally talks about it at the end of the episode, they start to foreshadow that he's trying to find out how to get his brother, Tommy, back. We go back to his
think
room,
we
which
all
is
knew
full on
that.
turned into this Charlie Day meme conspiracy board, trying to learn what's really going on.
And
They
Wanda
call the
will
Hex
find
an
him
Avengers
eventually.
training exercise gone wrong, but Billy doesn't believe that. Like, oh, how that's cute that you believe what they told you. That's just what the government inside the MCU told people that happened
course
in
they did.
Westview. Like, no, we did that on purpose.
That's some
We notice he
government
watches
type shit they
Jennifer's
would do.
YouTube channel on the regular. She seems like she uses it to sell her skincare products, which we learned are actually bogus. Don't use those. They have all kinds of harmful chemicals in them. Then they watch a clip of the news from back 3 years ago of a recording of the WandaVision finale with the Hex coming down, and he spots Scarlet Witch's rune inside the Hex as she was busy fighting Agatha. This is where they start to clarify that he doesn't have Billy Maximoff's memories anymore because of the way the sigil is working. You also notice in the background too, zoom and enhance, there's a
I wonder if
Carrie
he has
poster
them
from
now,
the
though.
movie. That's meant to be a callback to the way that
Since the
Rio
sigil
clawed
was
her way
broke.
out of the grave earlier this season. Like I said, all over his room, especially early on too, you see Easter eggs, things that they do in the other Agatha episodes along the road. He notes that the people in Westview refuse to talk about the Hex and Scarlet Witch after it happened, which we learned about during episode 1 when Agatha starts asking questions like, no, we don't talk about Wanda. First rule of WandaVision, you don't talk about Wanda or the Hex. It's sort of like a Voldemort situation, like don't say her name.
Because they're scared
Then
of
they
her.
set up the Ralph Boner cameo scene. Cannot believe they got Evan Peters to come back. It was hilarious. Billy apparently found him on Reddit, claiming to be someone who used to live inside the Hex and just has information about it, literally used to live with Agatha Harkness against his will, which he jokes about later.
She stole my house. Completely ruined the market value.
But they basically play it off as if he's turned into a conspiracy nut because of what happened, and his username on Reddit is Bonerific69. Nice pick. So a lot of people asking what happened to Ralph Boner after the WandaVision finale. There was supposed to be another episode of WandaVision, and there were also, on top of that, once they cut it down to 9 episodes, there were a bunch of scenes that they were not able to film or they had to cut out from episode 9. One of those deleted scenes was meant to show you what happened to Ralph
Oh,
Boner
yeah, I
and
think
how
I
he
remember that.
escaped the Hex. There was a big action scene when he still had his Quicksilver powers. He was going to help Monica Rambeau, Billy, and Tommy, and they were going to get in a fight with Agatha's rabbit, which was going to transform into a full-blown demon. Senior Scratchy. It wasn't going to be a version of Nicholas Scratch. Senior Scratchy was going to be a demon in bunny form. But after that fight went down, he was meant to escape the Hex. You actually see him cutting his ankle bracelet off and then just hightailing it out of Westview. Apparently into Paramus,
I don't
New
even know
Jersey,
he had
where
an
he
ankle
started his one-man
bracelet.
show.
What the hell?
But when they meet, he basically gives him the plot of WandaVision, what Scarlet Witch did with the different sitcom plots, just the general tropes episode to episode. And then on top of that, once Billy reads his mind, please don't ask about Agatha Harkness, he explains further how Agatha Harkness took over his life. If it wasn't clear, what happened is that Agatha Harkness followed Scarlet Witch, wanting her power, so she just waited for an opportunity to do that and used Westview. She basically inserted herself inside Scarlet Witch's Hex spell, like she wasn't initially part of the Hex to begin with. When she did that, she basically just moved into Ralph Boner's house and used her magic to transform him into that version and used him to gaslight Scarlet Witch to make her even crazier. That was why she was confused about her being her brother. Like, Pietro, is that you? Are you my Quicksilver? You don't really look like Aaron
whole
Taylor
different
Johnson, but I guess you're my
Quicksilver.
brother if you say you're my brother.
The
That
original.
nice lady he held hostage in his attic was Monica Rambeau. He mentions Billy and Tommy as well, too, to set up the idea of Billy Kaplan, Billy Maximoff here, remembering that he is Billy Maximoff and remembering his brother Tommy. Like, oh, that's the thing that I was wondering about. My brother Tommy, that's what I need to find. All because the sigil made him briefly forget his brother Tommy. You also notice he mentions what happened with Sword, White Vision. He believes Scarlet Witch is dead, which is basically the events of
Nah,
Doctor Strange Multiverse of
she ain't
Madness. Just
dead.
to explain that inside the
I
MCU
can
in present
guarantee
day
that.
here, everybody thinks that Scarlet Witch is dead. And part of the idea with Vision just kind of moving off into the distance is setting up the Vision series that we'll see in 2026. Like, he's still out there somewhere, but we don't know where or what he's doing because they're saving it for that TV show. This tees up Billy's research into Agatha Harkness while he listens to Lorna Wu's version of the Ballad of the Witch's Road. The reason why there's no immediate search results for Agatha Harkness in the MCU is because she used her magic over the centuries to stay hidden.
deleted
And
everything.
in the digital age, like the creation of the internet, that just continues in that form. But
And
eventually,
nowadays
he starts
with
seeing
TikTok and
references to the
everything,
Salem
you wouldn't
witch
be able to
trials,
hide all
Agatha's
that.
supposed history, people who also troll these different forums and the Wikipedias here, this other
You'll easily find
witch-specific version
anyone.
of Wikipedia. And he starts seeing Agatha across the centuries, across the last 100 years or so, too. Don't know who this Warlock username person is? You can let me know in the comments. Is it Wong? Is it like one of the other characters? It feels like Wong or Doctor Strange wouldn't be posting on these forums, though. This seems like her in the 1800s. We'll see that in some future flashbacks, either episode 7 or episode 8, maybe even episode 9. We find out that she was there when the Hindenburg crashed. They imply maybe she had something to do with that, like maybe she caused the Hindenburg to crash. She was also at the Titanic when it sank. Maybe she also caused it to sink. They even implied that she was in a relationship with Dolly Parton at some point. The Jolene song, quote-unquote, about a love affair was really about her. Then he spots that she was the only survivor of the Witch's Road and starts learning more about the Witch's Road and remembers that he's actually literally listening to a song about the Ballad of the Witch's Road. Then using his little list here to confirm that it is Tommy that is his main first goal in getting people back. Like, first Tommy, then we look into getting Mom back.
Dismantled,
So for
missing,
those of you wondering who's going to be
and barely
cameoing
alive, I
later in
guess.
this series, I think the chances of Tommy showing up by the end of the series are pretty high. Maybe some sort of Scarlet Witch reference to or her in the background.
I think Tommy's
Joe
gonna
Locke claims
be
that he
there,
has not
but
met
not really.
Elizabeth Olsen in real
It's
life,
just gonna
but that
show
could
him where
just be
he's
him
at.
lying. Then we basically get the rest of the events of episode 1 when he went to Westview to find Agatha Harkness, and it's meant to be the events of episode 1, but from his perspective. And they mostly play it like a comedic scene, showing you all the funny things that Agatha did when she was still trapped inside the spell, thinking that she was the mayor of Westview. Briefly stops at his old house because
didn't
remember, he
expect
does
that.
know that he
I
is
thought it
Billy
was actually
Maximoff
real.
now. And they reveal the reason why he broke into
Whole
Agatha's
time
house
she
is
was just
because
being
the spell
delusional.
to break her out required a personal item of hers, which he uses as her brooch. Also the idea that it was personal to Agatha, closely personal, because it had Nicholas Scratch's hair inside the brooch. Notice you can also see her talking to Rio, but you can't see Rio. That's because of the way Rio exists as the cosmic entity Death in the MCU, Mistress Death. She can make it so that she only appears to people she wants to see her.
So what the
Couple other
hell?
noticeable, funny details here too. She's wearing one of Ralph Boner's t-shirts from one of his family reunions. He points out a bunch of true crime genre tropes, like, oh, you're trying to cast me in this different role, but that's not really who I am. He breaks the spell, then there are a couple time jumps forward to present day, showing you a couple key moments, like her trying to deduce who he really is behind that sigil. And you basically see what it looks like from his perspective. Like, he speaks his name,
She
and
was
it
just a
sounds
crazy
normal,
old
but
lady.
from someone else's perspective, like Agatha's, they can't hear the name. Then we jump back to the actual present day of the end of episode 5 with Agatha clawing her way out of the mud. I'm sure Catherine Hahn loved filming this scene with all that goop all over her. Billy breaks the sigil himself because, like Agatha said, they're broken when they're no longer needed, and he no longer needs it. So now anybody can hear him talk the truth about himself. She proceeds to make fun of him, implying that eventually he will crave power just like everyone else, including her, like, oh, you don't want power now, but just wait. Eventually you will.
You already killed
Part
3
of this,
people.
I think, is Agatha trying to make him go dark, like, you're just like
Turn
me,
to the
kid.
dark side.
There are a lot of questions about this
She
next
could team
detail,
up
too.
with
She
him.
claims she figured out it was Billy Maximoff from the start, claiming that he and Scarlet Witch have the same tell, but won't tell him what the tell is, so, like, he has no idea. My early theory is that the way he twiddles his fingers, just like the way the Scarlet Witch does when they're trying to use magic. You also realize Agatha tries to make Billy think that he killed Lily and
because they
Jen,
act off
which he
emotion.
did not, because we see footage of them in later episodes. They'll be
Oh,
back.
never mind.
I believe right now they're just trapped below the Witch's Road in this underground
I guess
cell
they
here.
get
Not
out.
really clear what this space is, but we'll probably find out in next week's episode. All because next week's trial is supposed to be Lilia's trial. There are a couple other interesting things that Agatha reveals here too. Like, she kind of figures out how he came back by himself, even though he won't fully reveal it to her, and he doesn't understand himself even to begin with. She basically describes it as seeing an empty vessel and just jumping into it, and it being against the rules of magic, which I think they might
So
get
shit,
into
he might
when they
get
do more
punished
of
for it.
Rio's backstory in future episodes. Like, I think the idea in the MCU is that the rules of, like, just cosmic existence are that when you die, your soul, your spirit, has to travel to another dimension. Kind of like on Moon Knight, where you see him die and then go to the Duat.
Moon Knight.
Maybe there's going to be some kind of
Girl.
consequence for him breaking that rule. We'll see about that. But the way that he talks about it is that he can sense Tommy's soul somewhere in the universe, like the multiverse somewhere, but he doesn't know exactly where. So that's why he's walking the witch's road to literally find out where his brother is and bring him back. Then probably to get the rest of the family back together. Like, then we find mom, and then we find out what happened with dad. What they'll probably do, though, is they'll just extend that over the next couple of WandaVision spin-offs.
Yeah, they got their own little team. They're gonna be
in addition to the Vision TV
a crazy
show.
team when they all have full power.
Is going to be maybe like a Billy and Tommy show. They have a
I think
little
they said
standoff. Billy makes it
finding
seem like he's going
Tommy.
to try and take her out, but he
That's
can't
what
get
I
his
heard.
magic to work right. But the way they play this, Agatha clowning on him, makes it seem like it's more of a mental block, and he has to throw a tantrum currently. Like, the only way for him to use magic is for him to completely lose it. Just based on the progression episode to episode where the characters are developing, we'll probably see him get a little bit better at controlling it by the finale. But this is just a way to explain why he's not walking around all the time now with his full crown on, like Scarlet Witch would walk around with her full outfit on all the time. A couple other really interesting follow-up details here too. They address Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and why Scarlet Witch went to another dimension looking for Billy and Tommy instead of just looking across to the other town right next door for this version of Billy, her version of Billy. Agatha tries to play it off like Scarlet Witch didn't care enough to look for him, but I think that's meant to be a misdirect, like she's just messing with Billy's head. In reality, the reason why you didn't see Scarlet Witch searching in Eastview for that version of Billy, because she probably would have been able to sense him, was just because they didn't know they were going to be doing this plot when they actually filmed Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. They wrote the events of that movie when they were writing WandaVision, so this was long before they ever conceived of doing the Agatha TV show. So, like, all this plot was created after Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was done. So it's them sort of dealing with those continuity issues, like, wait a minute, why didn't she just look over across to the other town? Also, one of the problems they ran into with, like, the plot jumping back and forth between WandaVision and Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, and now Agatha, is that it was different people making all those different things. Like, the person who created WandaVision is also the person who ran Agatha all along, but the people that did the movie, completely separate group that were not really talking with the people that did WandaVision or watching those episodes. Generally, that causes a lot of chaos behind the scenes when you're trying to make everything connected. Agatha then references Robo Papa, aka White Vision. We don't know where he is, but that's meant to be a teaser for the Vision TV series in 2026, like I said. They'll explain that during that show.
Next year,
also,
not 2026.
Expecting to see Tommy on that show too. There's another funny moment with Agatha getting his name wrong too. She calls him Toby, which she's been doing to Mrs. Davis all season long. Just keeps calling her Mrs. Hart. There was even the joke with Mr. Shart during episode 5. They call a truce, then walk down to find the next trial, and you notice that the Witch's Road is now yellow, as in yellow brick road, because next week's episode is all about dealing with those pop culture tropes and depictions of witches which Lilia does not like and feels are incorrect. Like, they all play different versions of popular witches from the movies. Overall, I felt like it was a pretty solid episode, give us a lot of backstory, confirming a lot of fan theories about how Billy actually came back. Most of this I had figured out, but there were a couple details that I was surprised by. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below, and if you did spot any specific Easter eggs or references that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. I'll post an episode 7 trailer video tomorrow, and my full episode 7 video will post next week after they release it. So everybody click here for that episode 7 video. I'll update the link as soon as
But y'all be sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Like talking to y'all.